This is the injury report presented by NYU Langone Health. In today's injury report, we're talking about Jasson Domínguez's oblique strain, Anthony Rizzo's fractured right arm, and of course, we're going to talk about their rehab to return to action. So we're speaking with Dr. Laith Jazrawi, sports orthopedic surgeon at NYU Langone, to get a doctor's opinion on when these guys can get back to balling. Doc, how's it going, man? Welcome back.
Brandon, great to see you again, and excited to be here. Some good stuff to talk about today.
All right, so first let's talk about this oblique strain with Jasson Domínguez. Manager Aaron Boone said that he took an awkward check swing, and that led to the oblique strain. So is that a common or is that a freak injury in baseball?
It's amazing it doesn't happen more often, right? So what is exactly going on in this? So when you're check swinging, right, you've got the inertia of the bat kind of going through, and the player's trying to stop that inertia with his muscles going in the opposite direction. So what's happening is, and this is for the fans, this thing is called an eccentric muscle contraction, where you've got it being pulled in one direction, and then the muscles pulling in the other direction as well to stop that forward motion, stopping that inertia. And that is a tremendous amount of force on a muscle tendon unit. Leads to ruptures in a lot of other places, like the knee, where you get a quad or patella tendon rupture. We see a lot of that in basketball. But in baseball, with this check swing, it's going to affect the torso. And what's on the torso? It's all those oblique muscles, the latissimus, and these other oblique muscles that are the counterforce that are stopping that bat from going forward and contracting. The problem with those things, and similar to a hamstring injury, is that those oblique muscles, every rotation we do, putting a shirt on, moving, just playing catch, those muscles are engaged, and you can never fully rest them. That's why hammies, 3 months sometimes to get these players back. And this thing, for sure, they must have gotten an MRI, which they did, because initially it was the day-to-day thing, strain, muscle strain. I mean, those things you can potentially, in some minor ones, get back relatively quickly. But they must have gotten an MRI, and it showed something on the MRI. Once you see something on an MRI, either the muscles lighting up, the tendons lighting up, that's an immediate 6 weeks, because he's not going to be able to swing. You know, it's going to engage every time and hurt him.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Doc, because he was initially placed on the 7-day IL with a moderate strain, but now Boone is saying he's going to miss up to 8 weeks. Yeah. So, since you're saying that about the MRI and what they could have saw on the MRI, now does that make it kind of normal in terms of the timeline for a pretty significant oblique strain?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's, for me, if I get a positive MRI finding on any muscle or tendon injury, it's a minimum 6 to 8 weeks. And when you get into hammies that are recurrent, you're starting to get, into, longer time periods. Here's the good news. It's going to get better. That's the bottom line. This guy's going to get better. He's going to come back and play. It's just going to take a little longer than we expect. And once you recover from it, you recovered. That's it. It's fine. No surgery for this.
All right, so luckily he doesn't have to have surgery. Let's talk about the rehab process, though. What's that going to be like? And as the Yankees trainers, what are they going to have to do when he does come back to kind of prevent this from reoccurring or possibly getting worse when he gets back into the lineup?
Yeah, so this is one of those muscles where it's hard to sort of isolate and work. But the bottom line is he's going to rest. And rest that muscle tendon unit initially, and he's going to follow it by working the muscles around and keeping his core strong, and the rest of his lower extremity muscles and upper extremity muscles, and work around it and keep in shape while this is healing. And then prevention is all about, in this case, flexibility and keeping all his muscle tendon units sort of flexible and nimble. And that's what they're going to focus on. So a lot of once he gets better, rotational work. But ultimately, this is one of those things where it's your body, it's an eccentric force. It's so strong when you check swing like that, especially in these these professional athletes, they have such they're so strong upper body that it's just it's the nature of the beast. It's one of those things that is hard. But the idea is to strengthen all the accessory muscles around those oblique muscles to shock absorb or distribute the forces more effectively. And that's what they're going to do for him. They're going to work his, other muscles, the lat, things that support the oblique muscles in terms of, helping.
Well, that's good news, Doc. You got a lot of Yankees fans sitting here hitting with the woo-saw right now with that good news, because we're talking about one of their best prospects who we've seen this team have to call up prospects because of guys getting injured. And one of those guys is first baseman Anthony Rizzo. Ben Rice has been called up for him. Rizzo, last Sunday, fractured his right arm. He's reportedly going to be out of the lineup for 4 to 6 weeks. Is there anything he can do in the meantime to kind of speed up that recovery process? And does 4 to 6 weeks sound right in terms of time frame?
Well, okay, so let's try to read through this. And it's often challenging to kind of read through these injury reports and try to figure out what's going on. But they talk about a fracture, right? Mm-hmm. Typically, a fracture takes about 6 to 8 weeks to heal. So they're giving you a 4 to 6 week timeline about getting back. So that doesn't mean he's, when they say 4 to 6 weeks, that means he's playing again. But these players got to get back in, hit batting practice at least 2 weeks prior, a week prior to what they're doing. So to me, it sounds like more of an avulsion type of injury, not something that obviously needs surgery. So that 4 to 6 weeks timeline is smaller than we usually see for a true broken bone. So I'm optimistic that this injury is not so bad, that this will be one of those things where it's a smaller injury than a true big break in the bone, which typically requires surgery. And I'm optimistic, with that timeline. So that for me, when I hear that short timeline and a broken bone, that means it's not so bad.
Doc, Rizzo has been hit with injuries the last 2 years. He's kind of been on a slump this year. He was even pulled out of the lineup for some of the games. So when you're talking about a player that's been injured before, trying to get himself out of a slump, and then he gets hit with something like that, is there anything trainers and doctors can do to kind of get to the player mentally, to mentally keep them in it as well while they physically rehab?
Yeah, so for me, it's all about giving the player perspective about this injury type. So broken bone, great, right? Bones heal well, okay? So the discussion with him from a psych level is that, you broke the bone, but we know it's going to heal, and you're going to be back, and you're going to have no deficits from this. So the idea is to, really keep the athlete informed about this, not have them in a black box about their condition and start to, their, mind starts to migrate in areas, and that can be self-defeating. So it's really to educate them about what's going on, and then the trainers and everyone, the therapists, have them all on point about what what's going on here, so that they're all on the same page, and they're not sort of telling the athlete, oh, I've seen an injury like a broken wrist and it took them 3 months to get back. It's really important, because every injury is different and different players, and it's not the same bone that's necessarily broken in the wrist or forearm. So the key is having a very clear understanding of what the condition is. Everyone who takes care of the player educated about that and on board with what the process is, both rehab-wise and getting them back to play, and a timeline to do that. And it's okay if that timeline is off by a couple of days. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean we were wrong about the condition. It's just every player heals a little differently.
Pro athletes love the 3 C's: clear-cut communication. Yeah. Thanks, Doc, for that. Thanks, and for today's injury report.
All right. My pleasure, Brandon. Great catching up again. See you soon.